Welcome to the Money Huddle, a podcast that explores financial topics for families and small business owners. Hosted by Michael Baker and Ross Marinell. All opinions expressed by Michael and Ross or any podcast guests are solely their own opinions and may not reflect the opinions of Planners Alliance. The podcast recording is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for investment decisions. Clients of Planners Alliance may maintain positions in securities discussed on the program.
The Money Huddle. My name is Michael Baker, and I'm here with Ross Marinell. Ross, what's cracking?
Hey, man, living the dream today. Excited.
Yeah.
Football season's about ready to kick off.
It is, man. We have our first official weekend of, I know, college football this weekend. I'm excited. Tonight.
We got Clemson going tonight, so all our Clemson fans out there got to be excited. So, Michael, this starts one of the biggest time-wasting activities known to man.
Yes, I think I know where you're going.
Fantasy football is about to begin. If you haven't already had your draft, you're probably having it this weekend, getting ready for the season, and that means you're about ready to burn about 3-4 hours a week for the next 15, 16 weeks,
right,
to try and win your office pool.
Guess who will not be doing that?
So I heard you're not a player.
I, confession time, have never played any fantasy sports at all. I would not even know how to do it if someone said, "Hey, join this league." I get asked, every year, "Hey, you want to do?" And no, I'm just not interested. Because at this point I've gone on so long, I kind of have to be like, I just got to hold to my guns.
You're past the point of no return. You're gonna. They're going to have to put that on your tombstone.
I'm in rarefied air.
Never played fantasy football.
Never played fantasy sports.
Well, the good news is for you probably have about 1,000 hours of your life back.
I've wasted it on other things, I'm sure, but not fantasy sports.
So I bring that up because it is interesting, right? Because how much? Well, first of all, I didn't realize how many people play. So believe it or not, there's an organization called the Fantasy Sports and Gaming Association.
I believe it 100%.
This is hysterical.
Okay.
There's like 59 million people that play fantasy sports.
Okay. How many people are part of the association?
0.
Oh.
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. I can't imagine anyone's a member. But
of one. You have one president, one chairman of the board, the whole caboodle.
Yeah. It's one person from ESPN.
I'm going to form this association. It may take off.
But they did compile demographic statistics, which I thought were, it was good. It put it in perspective.
Sure.
59 million people playing fantasy sports, burning 3-4 hours a week, preparing your lineup. You're going through waivers. You're getting ready for the game time. This is not even counting the amount of time you spend watching football. This is just preparing your lineup to play.
Well, that's probably where most of the time suck actually comes in. It's like, these people that are hardcore fantasy players, they're like doing, all right, so let's think about this. How many people you think of these 59 million are like just casuals, like, yeah, whatever, I'll just play, and, they don't put, and how many people do you think are actively like, they're doing scouting reports and they're reading all,
right.
They're hardcore.
I saw that the average person spends about 3 hours a week preparing their fantasy sports team. So you think about that extrapolated out over a season, you're probably investing over a full work week into just fantasy, whatever consumption. You're just into it.
That's crazy.
So that's nuts. And so we always, we kind of tease around the office. We're like, how many folks have had a better plan prepared for a week vacation than they have their retirement, right? Just kind of a joke. We're not being serious about it necessarily, but there is some underlying truth.
There's some truth there.
So it's like, while we're about to embark on the biggest time-wasting activity of our year, fantasy football, don't forget, whatever amount of time, here's the challenge, right? Whatever amount of time you dedicate to fantasy football, dedicate that same amount of time to your financial plan this year. Let's just see what it does.
Or improving, I would just say improving your financial situation. Right. I can think of, there are a lot of people who are business owners or entrepreneurs that, what would an extra 3 hours a week of just, deep thinking, refining processes, evaluating your business model,
Right. How much more income would that produce than the pool that you're going to win in your fantasy league?
Exactly.
I mean, what are you going to win? $200-$300? If you
yeah,
win,
I'm not knocking the idea that, we all need to have time for play and enjoyment. But I'm just going to be honest with you. It's like I heard someone say one time, we deal with retirement, our retirement planning clients very often. But they talked about golf, and they said, if you play golf every day, it becomes a job.
Yeah.
And it's kind of that same thing. It's like if if you're one of these folks that, it's just very casual and you're in the league and you're like, okay, I'll start whoever and just let the chips fall where they may. But if you're a person who is like grinding, like looking at who's got the pre-release like injury reports for the week and who's playing who and what's the sporting line betting lines.
You're jumping on the backup running back. Somebody got injured.
Yeah.
You're first to get your waiver claim in. You're jumping the gun.
If you are doing that, dare I suggest that you've really stripped a lot of the joy out of that.
So listen, I'm going to play.
It's like you've hired yourself to be like, a GM of a team that does not exist.
That's not going to make any money.
Exactly.
And so I'm going to play. I'm just not going to play.
No, I mean,
very
if you
well.
play one of these leagues that's got like high stakes, you're going, 25 grand is on the line or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm going to make a test.
I'll know my role, but
I'm going to dedicate 15 minutes a week. I'm going to allot myself 15 minutes. And if that doesn't get the job done, I'm just going to lose.
Well, what's been hilarious is I've heard stories over the years of like these leagues where everyone throws some money in the pot, and then the person that wins is like the person that knows like almost the least about football. Because they're just like, I don't know. Who is this Brady guy?
I just drafted Tom Brady.
I thought he's pretty good, So
all right, man. So
hey,
everybody enjoy football season.
Before we leave, so I think we have to pay our due respects because some sad news came across the waves this past week and a half.
Man. So
Andrew Luck.
So for those of you that know me, I'm from Indiana.
The Colts fan.
Big Colts fan.
Andrew Luck.
We lost our. So remember the story was when we drafted Luck, we had 15 years of Peyton Manning or so. We were going to transition from one Hall of Fame quarterback to the next. It's going to be this seamless 30 years of just glorious quarterback play in Indianapolis.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we lost Andrew Luck this weekend. He is choosing his health and maybe some happiness over the extra money. We've talked a lot about that. At some point, you have enough money to accomplish your
these guys,
dreams,
especially folks that play the quarterback position in the NFL and some of the superstars in the NFL. I mean, they get paid unbelievable amounts of money, and their health, like their well-being, is on the line. I mean, like I don't know if you saw, but Rob Gronkowski was just on. He was doing some speaking thing, and he was talking about that he had just gone into like mentally a dark place with football. Like one of the reasons why he walked away from the game, and he made this comment about like after the Super Bowl, he said, so after the Super Bowl, I could not walk for like a period of time. I want to say it was like a couple of weeks. He said, I had the worst thigh bruise that I've ever had. He's like, I couldn't walk. He says, so here he is. I've won the Super Bowl champion, and I'm laying in my bed crying. I can't even like celebrate and feel good about it. And, I think a lot of fans lose that perspective on some of these athletes. It's like, hey, when you're talking about a neck injury, like, you don't know the conversations that they're having with their doctors. Their doctors are like, look, man, if you get knocked again, like you're wheelchair bound, I mean, we're talking about the biggest, fastest, most aggressive athletes on the planet are playing NFL football. I would put that up against anything. I'm not saying toughest because I know I've seen some rugby matches. I'm like, whoa,
right.
But I mean, biggest, fastest. So, to Andrew Luck, hey, we wish him all the best, man. The dude's got he's got a Stanford education.
I mean, seriously, look, would you rather have, let's say $30 million in the use of your body and your brain, or $250 million and you can't do it?
And you're
you can't enjoy your life, or so. I think it's all good.
Yeah, man. The future's bright for that dude.
So what else? What we got?
So a couple articles this week. You want? I'll let you choose. You want the deep and insightful, or do you want like just the rage inciting?
Rage inciting.
Okay. So we're both constantly reading different articles about financial topics. I mean, we live in an information age where it's just like we get waterboarded on a daily basis with articles and content. I try to, pick and choose like what makes sense. But every once in a while, like I read something that I'm just like, what were they thinking? And so background on this article, it was originally published on Advisor Perspectives. And I have learned that this was a guest contribution. So this was like an article that was written and submitted, and they published it. But it was written by a gentleman named Rick Kaler, if I got that pronunciation correct. And he has one of the worst takes on annuities that I've read in a very long time.
Okay, let's hear it.
So, he originally, I think he's writing, the intent of the article is right about the Secure Act, which is currently still tied up in Congress, has not passed yet. But one of the things about the Secure Act is that it would potentially open up the avenue for annuities to be inside of 401k plans. Mm-hmm. And he clearly does not want that. But he makes a comment. I'm going to read a couple quotes from this article. He goes, here is an actual sentence. He goes, annuities have no place being owned by an IRA or, as the Secure Act would allow, a 401k plan. That's an actual sentence in the article. Okay. And his justification for that is understanding that qualified retirement money or IRAs, 401k plans, 403b plans, even a Roth IRA, it's a tax deferred wrapper. And so his saying is annuities also offer tax deferral. Thus, therefore, you should never have an annuity or an IRA own an annuity.
Right.
But for that reason alone.
Right.
For that reason alone.
So for people listening, if you had an after tax or non-retirement account, if you invested that into an annuity, it would grow so your interest gains would grow tax deferred. At the future time when you went to make withdrawals, then you would have to pay tax on those gains, just regular or ordinary income tax.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so he is just railing what he calls salespeople. He says agents and their companies spare no expense in developing convincing storylines, half-truths, and sleight-of-hand explanations of why it makes perfect sense for a retirement plan to own an annuity, right? Now, here's the thing, and this is where I've come down on this, because I have chewed on this article now since it was published, and I continue to...
It's got you fired up?
I continue to calm myself and distill down my ultimate thought, and I think my ultimate thought is this gentleman is obviously a very intelligent guy. He's got several bona fide credentials behind his name. Probably runs a successful practice wherever he's located. He's not an idiot. Mm-hmm. And there's no objective defense to some of the statements that he makes. So it's what it is to me is it is a very biased and slanted view. And when you hold yourself out, as a fiduciary, as so many of these folks, myself included, you included, as we hold ourselves out to fiduciaries. To me, one of the things is the thing that commonly gets said is put the client's interest before your own. That's the one thing. Put your clients first. Put your clients first. But there's layers to that fiduciary, standard. And one of those layers is that you're required to be objective and fair. And, when you are clearly not being objective, to me, that does just as much harm as some of the folks that are not putting their clients' interests first, especially if you are a content creator and you're going to put stuff out in the web, because so many people are out there using Google and Bing and these major search engines as a proxy for getting financial advice. Instead of going and sitting and talking to someone, they're going in and they're searching on stuff alone. And then they find, first of all, we're all wired for confirmation bias. So if we already think something, we tend to gravitate towards the opinions that are going to just reaffirm what we already think. And so you've got Ken Fisher out there, master of annuities are awful. Like, I hate annuities and you should too. Well, stuff like this, that is just, it's truly an opinion piece, but it's not presented as that. It's like he's out there making some truth claims. And I just have a problem with the objectivity of it.
Yeah, the challenge, of course, is that we're making blanket arguments against an entire wing of investment.
That's like saying, baseball's a terrible sport. You should never play it, watch it, have your kids play it, don't go near it, don't even drive by a ball field. That's how terrible baseball is.
So we have evaluated and reviewed a number of different agreements and contracts. They're all built a little differently.
Right.
We have uncovered some incredible programs that really work for people. And we have also seen some really hideous programs that were bad. Maybe just the contractual terms weren't in the client's best interest,
right,
or as rich as they could have been given what the other product offerings might have been at the time. So there's always a little bit of, you have to look back in the rearview mirror and figure out, was this a good decision or not? So it's really kind of shameful that you just lump everything together and say, this is terrible. The other challenge I have with it is, we all have biases, right?
Sure.
It's understanding, and we talk a lot about like a retail investor's investment behavior or bias, but it also stems from the people giving the advice. You have to understand and recognize that, yes, you have influence over this plan, but it needs to be built and designed to suit the client that is in front of you. And you can't let your biases just, kind of blanket or cross off a whole wing of what may be available and suitable alternatives for a person to build a financial plan.
Sure. Well, I think, my take on that is this, is like, I'm actually okay if you're biased. I just want you to own it. I just want you to say, it's like, hey, look, I just want you to know, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, that I'm biased. And here's why I'm biased. And give them like, hey, it's been, statements like this. It's been my experience, what I've seen in my time in the industry. This is where I have come down on my conclusions. Now, to use like this phrase, like, there's more than one way to skin a cat, right? There's multiple ways that you can design, savings and investing strategies. There's multiple ways that you can design retirement income strategies. And the reason there are multiple ways is because if we're going to truly sit around and talk about clients and say, every client situation is unique, and those clients deserve advice that's specific for them and tailored for them. If we're really going to say that, then we can't run around and use like blanket arguments, like you're saying,
right,
like, oh, no one should ever own this product,
even
because
if there's a bit of a philosophical difference.
Exactly.
I thought about something as you were talking about this story. So we know who Jack Bogle is.
Yeah.
He's the founder of Vanguard. Vanguard is the leading.
They're known for being one of the low-cost providers for investment tools.
Right.
Yeah.
Really drove in an era where mutual funds were extremely popular. There were a lot of, there was some fees associated with mutual funds for money management. They forged a new path, literally.
Exactly.
To say, here is a way that we can invest passively in an index. We can reduce management costs. We believe over time that the index is going to outperform or maintain performance with a lot of the fund managers anyway, right? That was their kind of philosophy. Right. But you know what Jack Bogle also did? I know where you're
going with this, yep.
He also invested in some small cap mutual funds that were actively managed. Completely different ideology than what he's forging.
Right.
The literal, if you looked up the definition of index investing, it's his picture.
Right.
But he also has inside of his portfolio some actively managed mutual funds. His son ran a small cap index mutual fund. How can that happen? And literally he's just like, look, that life isn't always the way it's supposed to be. Sometimes you got to do things differently.
I get that. And so that's, to me, it's like, again, my biggest takeaway from me personally after reflecting on this, I went through like the 12 stages. At first I was like angry, and then I was in denial that someone But where I'll come down on is this: is like, look, I got no problem if you're going to create content. Hold yourself to a higher standard, right? Especially if you've got like the credentials behind your name, where you're gonna put yourself out in the marketplace. Like Ken Fisher, he might be a CFA or a CFP, but I don't know him as that. He has branded himself as the anti-annuity guy. Great marketing, no doubt. Mm-hmm. But if you're going to hold yourself out as a fee-only financial planner or a CFP or a charter financial consultant or any of these designations where you're saying, hey, I'm a fiduciary and I'm held to a fiduciary standard to put people first, then you owe them objectivity and you owe them fairness. That may mean that the best plan for them or the best person for them is not you, and that's okay. There's mm-hmm. plenty of fish in the sea. So that was my ultimate takeaway on that. And we'll put that article in the notes, and if anyone wants to read through it and kind of see it, hold your nose because it stinks to high heaven. But so the next thing, and this kind of dovetails into that point, was do you ever read the guys from Farnham Street?
Yeah, I do occasionally come across things they do.
I try to read their stuff, when I can. And anyway, I get their email, and it's like there's always a little section called like brain food. So I try to read through it because it just makes me think. And anyway, there was an article this past week that I read the first sentence, and I was like, I have to read this. So the article is "In Praise of Slowness, Challenging the Cult of Speed," and the first sentence was, "We live in a world of scarce understanding and abundant information." And that was like, yes, we do. So I started reading it, and it's just full of like, it's very reader friendly. So definitely we're going to put a link to it so you can read the article. But one of the paragraphs that I thought was just spot on. He says, "We live in a world with more information than ever, and yet we understand less. We have come into the belief that the simple act of reading confers understanding. Worse, most of our reading is elementary reading or skimming, a far cry from syntopical reading, which seems to be more fertile for the mind willing to do the work." And he goes, that's just it. We don't want or can't find the time to do the work that's required to hold an opinion. It's much easier to simply read the opinions of others and let them think for us.
Yeah, this is first take generation, right? Where we're just going to square off. You and me, we're going to throw a topic out there. I'm going to argue one side, you argue the other. Maybe we did research on it. Maybe we did it.
Right.
But we can make a superficial argument that's not very deep, that doesn't have a lot of factual content behind it. But hey, we can sit here and argue all day.
Well, if you look at like our quote unquote news shows now, it's all commentary. They deliver like news, but they're really delivering like their commentary on what has happened. Not like, here are the facts. And, it's, if you look at it. And so that to me is, it kind of goes, we obviously I take the financial slant on that with, there's just so much stuff out there and, financial journalism and things like that where, people are going online and they're trying to find answers to things, because, well, hey, what we talked about, we got a million things going on. We got our fantasy football league we're trying to figure out. And, while I'm doing that, I'm going to Google this topic that I'm interested in. And, they skim through these articles written by folks like this gentleman, Kaler, and they form an opinion
very quickly.
And they don't. And that is such a short-sighted view of a very, very complex topic.
But this is also, though, part of the joy of actually going and doing a deep dive, particularly in the beginning of our relationship with a prospective family, is being able to get in and do real due diligence and discovery to understand everything from just sort of the investment history to their experiences with different types of investments, what has, in their opinion, worked for them and been successful, what's been something they want to avoid. And if you can really dig into the roots, you can build something with depth that's not superficial, that's not just a blanket, here's a recommendation for X, whether it's Social Security planning or something where you just fire off, well, claim early because it's going to be gone. And you can make those kind of superficial argument based kind of suggestions, but if you don't get in and really do the depth, and I think people understand that if you've been through that process where it's been based more on fact and discovery versus just sort of opinion, there is a different outcome that you can attain from that. I think a comfort and a belief in the ultimate outcome,
right?
That you actually say, okay, there was some legitimate work, and like we always say, you just got to roll up your sleeves and kind of get a little elbow grease into some of these financial planning situations.
Yeah, no, I mean, so we got a few minutes left here on the podcast, so I'll throw a quick question out. If you need a moment to think, I was just gonna say, what's the best thing in your mind that you've read or listened to in the last week and a half, 2 weeks?
Ooh, that's good.
I can think of the worst because I'm sure that Andrew Luck announcement while you were on vacation hit you right in the feels. I thought about you, man. I saw that. I was watching. What was I watching? I can't remember. It was some sporting event on TV, and the red bars just kept flashing. I was like, "Oh no! What?" I hope Ross is seeing this.
Truly a shock. I don't think anybody around the Colts or in that area. This is not on anyone's radar. So it really caught people by surprise. I'll tell you what I've been spending time reading.
Okay.
And I wouldn't say that it's the best or worst, but just what's kind of consuming my brainwaves a little bit.
Gotcha.
Is we've been doing some deep dives into a lot of the IPO market here recently.
Oh, yeah.
And and just host of companies that have been coming public that are very, very
Everybody's
popular.
S1's coming out.
Everybody's been getting kind of a push to the market here this year. And we've seen WeWork and Uber and Lyft and Peloton just released an S1. And I am just so I read a good portion of it. I start in the risks section. It's just my sweet spot.
Yeah.
But really kind of building in. That's funny. They related their business. I saw an article on them through, I can't remember who the site was. I'll find it and link it. But basically it said CEO of exercise bike startup Peloton says the company sells happiness in his big pitch to investors. So talk about marketing.
We sell happiness.
You're a fitness company. You sell exercise bikes and content related to it. And I'm really trying to grapple.
Coca-Cola's going to bust them up because it wasn't that Coca-Cola slogan open happiness?
I don't know.
Dude.
But
Coca-Cola's going to hit them as soon as they come out.
I'm fascinated by the number of IPOs coming to the market that are unprofitable.
Garbage.
There's something there with these businesses. There maybe, but there's at least with Peloton, there's content expansion they could get into.
Well, for them, so we talked about them briefly, but they think they're a technology company, and I think that's truly where they're trying to go. I think they're trying to get into the subscription fitness. We are going to be your one-stop shop for workouts by subscription and delivery through technology. The challenge I have with them is their delivery devices are ridiculously expensive. If I want to watch Netflix, I can go get a $50 device, or maybe cheaper than that, from Amazon or Best Buy, and I pay my monthly subscription fee, and I've got access to Netflix. If I want a Peloton bike, that's a small mortgage.
Well, my point is, these businesses, a lot of them are masquerading as technology companies,
right,
when ultimately it's you're a real estate company, you're a fitness company,
right,
you're a ride-sharing company. And what does that mean for our economy over the next 1 to, let's say, 5 years? What if these businesses never become profitable, which they're claiming in their regulatory disclosures might be the case? What does that mean for tax revenue growth? And I mean, just think, is it healthy? So that's kind of what's consuming. I've been so focused on some of these.
Gotcha.
It's step back and look at something else.
So I'm not sure. I know that you know this gentleman. Have you heard or did you listen to Scott Galloway on Masters in Business with Barry Ritholtz?
I've gotten through about half of it.
Dude, I sent that to you, right? Did I send it to you?
You
did. So that podcast is probably, for sure, it's the best thing that I've heard this week, because he just goes in. I mean, he goes in on, I love that he has no filter. He's going to tell you what he thinks. And that's great. There's no cushion. There's no fluff. I mean, he goes in on WeWork. He gives you his straight up opinion about Bezos and Amazon. He does not offer Steve Jobs any quarter when it comes to being a good person. I mean, it was. I enjoyed it. I thought it was entertaining, but more important than being entertained, I thought he dropped some serious wisdom in that, because he is a professor at a major
NYU Stern.
Yeah, great business school. I mean, the elite, like upper crust. And he talks about, that a lot of the what he was saying, one of the things he said resonate. He goes, that they have these speakers that come in that, a couple times a week for lunch, they'll have, speakers come in. He goes, oftentimes it'll be some billionaire. And he goes, we've gotten to this place that because somebody's aggregated $1 billion that they are qualified to opine on just about anything.
Yeah.
Anything. And he goes, never mind they made their money like iron ore smelting or something crazy. He's like, we're going to come and bring these people in and have them talk to these young people, and they're going to tell them stuff like what? Follow your dreams. And he's like, no. He goes, if you want to be in this top 1% of earners, he goes, you got to be prepared in your 20s and 30s to not have work-life balance. You got to grind it. You got to go get it. And he goes, we're not telling these people that, there's more to life than just making money. And that, his book, The Algebra of Happiness, that he's currently promoting, he talks about there's a certain level of wealth and, income that once you've kind of attained this level of a certain level of financial stability, that the additional happiness of more money just flatlines.
Sure.
And it's full of, I think, wisdom from his life, and it's worth. I grabbed the book. I'm going to listen to it on Audible to just to listen to, but that podcast alone is worth a listen. If I put a video up on LinkedIn, but it's worth a listen. If you've got kids in college, he's a straight shooter. Like he's not going to give you fluff.
If your dream and your passion is to play fantasy sports, don't follow your dream. Get a job that you're good at, that you can make a lot of money.
Man, well, that one kid, what did he just win? That he made did he win like $3 million winning the world Fortnite tournament or something?
Can you imagine how good you have to be at Fortnite to be the champion? The odds of that.
I can't.
You probably have better odds of being
I don't even want to think about the hours of that child's life he has spent in a gaming chair playing that game. I don't even want to think about it. So anyway, as always, thanks for listening. Give us a shout if you would like us to explore a topic for you. Our email address is themoneyhuddle@vcplanning.com, or you can find us on Facebook. Give us a like, drop us a note, and as always, we'll talk to you next time.